Item number 2, which is declaring a Kratom as a public nuisance in the unincorporated area of the County of San Diego. And this item is being brought forward by Supervisor Diane Jacob, our Sheriff Bill Gore, and our District Attorney Summer Steffen. Let me ask Supervisor Jacob if she has any introductory comments she'd like to make.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do, and thank you for that. This was an issue that was brought to my attention from a constituent in Alpine. Before that, I had never heard of Kratom or the dangers and what it presents. So after doing further investigation, and we have talked with the District Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Office, and the medical examiner, and our health officials, Dr. Wooten, that's the reason that I've brought this item to the board today. So the action basically directs the Chief Administrative Officer to return to the board in 30 days with a proposed ordinance amendment declaring metrogenine and hydroxymetrogenine to be a public nuisance. And council can comment on why the public nuisance instead of an outright ban of the sale and distribution, if the board wishes. So here are some of the facts that we've learned. According to our medical examiner's office, metrogenine, the active ingredient in Kratom, has been associated with 10 deaths from 2014 to 2018. There are no Federal Drug Administration FDA-approved uses for Kratom, and the FDA issued alerts in 2012, 2014, 2016, warning consumers not to use Kratom. Furthermore, in June of 2019, the FDA stated that data suggests that certain substances in Kratom have opioid properties that expose users to the risk of addiction, abuse, and dependence. Reducing the number of people addicted to opioids should be one of our highest priorities, and I know Supervisor Gaspar has done a lot of work on that issue. But reliance on products with unsubstantiated claims may delay their path to recovery and put them in greater risk of addiction, overdose, and death. In light of these significant public health and safety concerns, the City of San Diego actually took action in 2016 to ban the use and sale of Kratom. Now, I believe it's appropriate for us to take a similar action, which again would be to declare a public nuisance. I'd like to thank Sheriff Gore, District Attorney Summer Steffen for their support and joining me in their support of this action today, but also here in the audience to address any questions that the board may have is our Public Health Officer, Dr. Wilma Wooten, our Chief Deputy Medical Examiner, Stephen Campman, who I understand is an expert in this field and has some very valuable information. I don't know if he would like to speak or just be here to answer questions, but he's an expert in this area. Assistant Sheriff Kelly Martinez, and the District Attorney's Assistant Chief of Narcotics, Sean Tefreschi. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the extent of my comments, but I wanted the board to know that all of these individuals are here to answer questions, or if any of you would like to address the board, feel free. Okay, they're here to answer questions.
Okay, did the County Council want to comment in regards to the public nuisance aspect of this?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. The reason that we are going with a public nuisance rather than any kind of a criminal act is because the criminal act would be preempted by state law.
Okay, very good. Any questions by supervisors? If not, we do have a number of people who want to speak on this item. All of them are in opposition to it. We have 23 individuals that wish to speak, one group presentation, and 29 who wanted to register their opposition. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hear the group presentation first, and I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and call those individuals forward.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. I'd like to invite forward Jane Babin, Jeffrey Laredo, and Mal Hadow. You'll have 15 minutes to address the board. All individuals in your group must provide testimony during that time period. And please state your name for the audio record.
Thank you. It's Mac Haddo, Senior Fellow on Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on this important issue. The American Kratom Association believes that we should engage in a policy of harm reduction. We believe that that should be the bedrock principle for all government entities as they deal with citizens' abilities to manage their health and well-being. Today, there are more than 15 million Americans who use Kratom in the United States. About a third of them use them as most people would use a cup of coffee in the morning for an energy boost and to increase their focus. Another third use it to improve their mood and anxiety during the day. But a third of them, and this is where most of the focus of the FDA has been, use it to manage acute and chronic pain. That's an important area because when we look at harm reduction, we certainly are concerned about opioid abuse with the crisis that we face in America today. The National Institutes on Drug Abuse, the director, Nora Volkow, in testifying before the U.S. Congress, was asked the question as to whether or not she believed that the FDA's recommendation for a ban on Kratom should be accepted. And her answer was no, because to do so would stifle needed research in the field, and the evidence that had been presented to date indicated there was potential for Kratom to be an effective alternative for acute and chronic pain as opposed to the use of opioids and other products that have a much higher safety profile than Kratom has. The U.S. Congress, in the FY 2020 budget, specifically directed for increased funding to be provided by the federal government into Kratom. Today, there are 2 studies that have been authorized by NIDA to the tune of about $7 million, with another $3 million in other studies, which directly look at whether or not Kratom can be an effective alternative and can it be converted into a prescription status drug down the road. Today it is a plant that's grown in Southeast Asia, has been used safely for centuries. It has been in the United States since the early 70s when our the Vietnam War soldiers came home, and they had found it to be very effective in helping them get through long days in hot jungles in fighting that battle. When they came home, they asked that it be imported into the United States by friends over in Vietnam. Many of the Hmong population that increased dramatically in immigration to the United States after the Vietnam War brought with it as well. So it's been in the United States for a long time. In the mid-90s, there was a spike in Kratom use because of its availability in some of the tobacco shops and smoke shops. There were some creative entrepreneurs that decided that, it doesn't sell very well because what Kratom does not do, it does not give you the euphoric high that are associated with opioids. It does not give anyone any kind of a pleasurable impact because it tastes terrible. You have to want to take Kratom, and you have to want to take it badly because it tastes that bad. And so what they did is they spiked it with products that would give the euphoric high that are associated with opioids. And there's documentation about commercial products that have been unregulated in the marketplace that are spiked with fentanyl, morphine, and heroin. All of those are dangerous opioids. And so when you hear reports about deaths that are associated or adverse events associated with Kratom, it's because they are spiked with adulterated versions of Kratom that have those substances that are in them. The Drug Enforcement Administration is tasked with the responsibility for scheduling any dangerous substance. And the question legitimately is asked that when the FDA submitted its recommendation to the Drug Enforcement Administration in 2016 that they should schedule metrogenine and 7-hydroxymetrogenine, the DEA initially published the restriction and then withdrew it in an unprecedented action by the DEA at the time. The FDA was asked to provide a full 8-factor analysis documenting and justifying their request for the scheduling of Kratom. They didn't do so until October 17th of 2017. That recommendation has been pending before the DEA since that time. Now, you should understand that typically the DEA acts within 90 days on any dangerous substance recommendation for scheduling because they want to protect the public health. And yet, for more than 2 years, the DEA has stood silent on that recommendation because they recognize that the studies that are being done and the reports that are cited by the U.S. Congress in their FY 2020 budget about the number of people who are successfully using Kratom to wean off of or replace opioids in the midst of an opioid crisis, where we find that we have tens of thousands of people that are dying annually in the United States. If we have a harm reduction measure that is available to them, we should encourage it. The FDA claims that kratom is an opioid because it hits the mu opioid receptor in the brain. That is the only justification they have for that. There are many substances that do that. Many dietary supplements do it. The antidote for the overdose, respiratory failure, naloxone, hits the same mu opioid receptor, but it does not suppress the respiratory system. Neither does kratom. Neither of the alkaloids that are suspect by the FDA, metrogeny and 7-hydroxymetrogeny, have any impact whatever on the respiratory system, so you will not see an overdose death that can be attributed to kratom. The FDA claims it is dangerously addictive, but 2 gold standard animal studies funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse dispute that claim directly. They were published in 2018. Both said there was no addiction liability, and they revealed in the test animals the astounding fact that the test animals actually reduced their cravings for morphine, which was the reference drug. Kratom works as a harm reduction tool. And finally, the FDA claims there's no approved medical use. That is true for thousands of dietary supplements that are used successfully by Americans to manage their health and well-being. It is not the reason to ban it. The fact that there's a concern about kratom is legitimate, but it's because of adulterated kratom. What the American Kratom Association recommends, as 4 states have already done, 21 states are now considering it, is to enact a Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which restricts adulteration, makes it so it's pure kratom that's sold in your county. St. Charles County and St. Louis did a similar kind of effort here, along with Utah, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And 21 states are currently reviewing that. States that have banned it in 16, like San Diego City did, are now reviewing those bans in light of the new science. My colleagues will present to you more important information. We'd stand ready to answer any questions you have, but we would ask that you adopt the harm reduction strategy of the Kratom Consumer Protection Act and do not ban it, because there's only one alternative for people that are using kratom today if you ban kratom from being able to access it, and that is either to go to more dangerous, higher safety profile NSAIDs or to opioids to manage their pain, or unfortunately to the black market where kratom products are highly adulterated. We ask that you join us in the rational public policy of harm reduction. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Laredo.
Okay, I'm going to ask, I know we got a lot of speakers, I'm going to ask you to please refrain from clapping and cheering. If you want to show your support, you can wave your hands in the air. We'll see that, and it'll be a little quieter. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And thank you for having me here today. My name is Jeff Laredo. I am a paid consultant to the American Kratom Association, so a little transparency for that. I am a recently retired federal civil servant. I spent 30 years working for all of you and all of you, most of which was within the Department of Health and Human Services, most of which was at the National Institutes of Health, 15 years of which was at the National Institute on Drug Abuse. I am an addiction policy expert. I am not a scientist. I am a public health guy. And I know more about science. I know enough about science to cause some trouble, but I am not a trained scientist. That said, and I'll be brief. First, I'd like to associate myself with everything that Mac just said. I don't need to repeat that. A couple of messages for me. I spent my federal career basically begging colleagues, the public, Congress, to follow the science, and I'm here to ask you to do the same thing. We don't know everything we need to know. That is absolutely true, and that's why we're asking the feds to do more research. We're asking other feds not to ban this product so that we can continue to do more research and learn what we need to know. I am not happy to be associated with criticizing the FDA. I spent 30 years as an HHS policy guy. You don't criticize the FDA because the FDA is, in fact, the gold standard for virtually everything it does. Unfortunately, and I wish I could explain this to you, I can't, they are wrong on this topic. They are wrong on the science, and that's really causing a problem. And I'm, believe me, really unhappy to say that in a public forum, but from everything I know, that is true. I also know that all of the other federal agencies that are involved in this topic were in a mostly different place before, and they're in a stronger, different place now. One of the things that Max said bears repeating. The Drug Enforcement Administration Once they have authority to go do something, especially scheduling, they go do it. They don't wait 90 days, like Max said. They go do it today, tonight. DEA already has the authority right this minute to put this product into Schedule 1. They've had that authority for over 2 years. They have chosen not to. We should pay attention to that. I can't tell you specifically why. None of my friends over there will tell me why. But I can tell you they are waiting for more compelling information because my 30 years of experience working with and often arguing with colleagues at the DEA, when they have authority to do something, they go do it unless there is a really serious reason not to. You know, in general, we've got over 50 years of somewhat shaky policy in the so-called drug policy world about bans and supply-side activity versus demand-side activity and whatever rhetoric that people want to use. What is most important to me personally as a public health person, and that I hope that you will pay attention to, if this product is banned, if that's the way you can, if that's the road you continue to go down, we know what will happen. Many of your constituents will die. They will die because if we preclude them from getting a product that is working for them, regardless of the arguments today, that is working for them, and we know it is working for them. If they have to give up that product, they're still going to be in pain. They're still going to be in attempted recovery from probably opioid addiction. What are they going to do? They're going to go to Oxy. They're going to go to heroin. They're going to go to whatever they can to relieve their pain. They will be what public health officials call naive drug users. They will go back to using an amount of drug that they may have used in the past. Their bodies can't handle that. They will overdose, and the coroner will see them. None of us want that. You certainly don't want that. And that is reason for enough. Even if you don't agree with any of the other arguments that we're making, until we know more about this, and until we have a safe product when it is not adulterated, until we know more about this, at the very least, let's avoid people killing themselves. Thanks very much. And I'll turn it over to Jane Babin.
Thank you for the hand waving. We appreciate that.
Hi, thank you for having us here today and considering this very important issue to me. I'm a California attorney. I am a registered patent attorney. I've been an attorney for 20 years. I have my own private practice in the unincorporated area of Forest Ranch in San Diego County. I became interested in Kratom because of the science behind it. It is a fascinating series of molecules in this plant, having the ability to stimulate aspects of the opioid receptor that address analgesia, that relieve pain, while having less side effects such as respiratory depression, which is what people die from when they die from opioids. I became affiliated with the American Kratom Association and have worked with them both as a paid consultant, but more often as a pro bono attorney and scientist. I have a PhD in molecular biology. I worked when I first came to San Diego at UCSD in the Department of Pharmacology and also at Scripps Research Institute in molecular biology. Through my association with American Kratom Association, I became the point person, I'm not quite sure why, but for reviewing autopsies and other death records from federal databases and from individuals around the country, individual counties, states, et cetera. I've looked at over 100 autopsy reports on people who have died with kratom in their system, so-called kratom-associated deaths. And I think some of the documents that Jeff provided address that. They're papers that I've written on it and co-authored with other scientists and members of the AKA. And in 2018, I was contacted by a local news station to talk about this same issue, about kratom and whether it should be banned. And I was told at that time that they had reports of 11 kratom-associated deaths. And I have presented those to you for your review. I know you've received an analysis from the sheriff, but I have a different analysis. I have a different take on it. And I just want to go through it briefly. There are the full details of each case report, including an investigation, autopsy, and toxicology for each of 11 individuals. But looking at the cases, of the 11, 10 are confirmed multi-drug use. 3 included fentanyl at levels that were known to be toxic, as well as diazepines, or benzodiazepines, ecstasy, various antidepressants.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. 3 cases were heroin. 1 was U47700 pink. Another was polydrug. And the third one, or the final one, the 11th case, which was not polydrug use, was an individual who was so decomposed by the time he made it to the coroner that they really couldn't do an analysis, a full analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
We'll now go, we have 23 individuals that wish to speak on this item. I'm going to ask you if you could keep your comments to within 2 minutes, and we'll ask the clerk to go ahead and call the first 5 speakers.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. Call forward Chris Weiss, John Kuykendall, Ben Swanson, Holly McCusick, and Ken Shuttleston.
Okay, and you can come up in any order. It doesn't make any difference as far as the speaking order.
And please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
Yes, my name is Chris Weiss. I'm a state scientist. I work for the state of California. I'm a representative for the state union. I'm not representing them today, but I just wanted to let you know that I have, I'm not a Kratom addict. I'm a Kratom enjoyer. 25 years ago, I had an exploded disc in my neck, and I had offered to me hundreds and hundreds of pills of opiates. So I've experienced opiates. That seemed to be the way to get rid of pain in the past. I do not like opiates. I've not been addicted to them technically, but I know the addictive power. In July of this past year, I went to a friend's birthday party. He's an elder at church. He's a very good man. And he was taking Kratom. And I asked him, what are you doing? I had never seen this before, like you mentioned. And I said, well, I would like to try that. I have chronic pain. I'm always in pain. And so I tried Kratom, and I've been using Kratom since. I have a medical doctor. I have the Cadillac Health Plan, you all know, thank you. And I see my pain management guy. I saw him yesterday. And I told him I was taking Kratom. And he said, I've never heard of that. I'll have to look into that. But he's been giving me many, many different kinds of pills. Celebrex is one that I enjoy. It's almost as good as Kratom, except it causes me to gain weight, just like 25 pounds in a very short time. And I don't want to use those products. I've used Kratom, and it's very successful at removing pain. I do not feel any need to be or thought of being addicted. I took it all yesterday, piles. I was very, very happy, very ecstatic, and I took none today. So I come before you. It's not stressing me out not to be here without my Kratom. But if you make it illegal for me to have Kratom, you'll make me a criminal. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is John Kuykendall. I'm actually a student out here in City College working on my prerequisites for nursing. I work construction during the day, which I'm missing right now to stand before you. And I also am a tour guide down here in San Diego as well. So, local San Diegan. I have many benefits from Kratom and using it. I go down to La Mesa because it's illegal out here in San Diego to, what's the name of the place? Bumblebee Botanicals. Shout out. Yeah, and I benefit mostly because I was a heavy drinker before, and actually I stopped drinking completely without even realizing that I stopped just by using Kratom 3 times a week. Low doses, nothing crazy. I don't feel like there's substantial evidence to make it a public nuisance. You have to provide evidence that there's an increase of injury to the public, and from what we hear today, there is no injury, but only benefits from Kratom use. More people die from alcohol a year, which is a legal substance. Over 3 million people die in the world. Coffee kills 92 people a year, and that's sitting right in front of you right now. So, Kratom, killing 10 people in a 5-year period. How many? Oh, that's water. I've been fooled. As well as, not to mention the people that die from sugar or any other substances. And we also know that making something illegal or banning it, it doesn't do the public any good. Instead, I encourage research. Let us know what we are putting in our bodies if you are unaware of it. I encourage that. Anyways, I yield my time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Next speaker.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Ben Swanson. I'm a happily married father of 2. I'm here today to request the board does not ban Kratom today. A ban on Kratom will deprive thousands of great people in San Diego County access to a natural, safe plant from the coffee family, whose benefits help millions of Americans live a better every day. Kratom is not a drug. Kratom is not an opiate. Kratom is not a synthetic substance. Though Kratom is relatively new to the United States, Kratom has been used safely for hundreds of years in Southeast Asia as a natural medicine. Kratom in its natural form is a safe herbal tea whose users claim energy, pain relief, depression and anxiety relief, and help users curb addiction to alcohol and opiates. According to Dr. Jack Henningfield, PhD, Kratom's potential for abuse is no more than nutmeg, hops, St. John's wort, or coffee. 5 years ago, I was about 80 pounds heavier and hopelessly addicted to alcohol. I drank almost every day until I was 35. The older I got, the more my back would hurt and the more alcohol I needed. I tried to quit drinking several times, but I always found my way back. I was arrested, and my family was falling apart. In the end, I was drinking a 5th of rum every night. In 2015, with the help of Kratom, I was able to quit drinking for good, and as of today, I've had not one sip. The primary reason for my drinking as I got older was to control my lower back pain so I could sleep at night. Sometimes the pain would immobilize me, require me to limp around with a cane, and multiple times prevented me from going out and enjoying my life. Alcohol controlled my pain, but I could not control the alcohol. 5 years later, I'm standing in front of this board, happily married, father of 2, begging you to keep Kratom safe and accessible to all the good people of San Diego County. I've lost too many friends and family members to alcohol and opiates, more than I care to count. I only wish they had lived long enough so I could give them a second chance with Kratom.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
As the next speaker is approaching the podium, I'll call forward 5 additional speakers: Nick Bebo, Bonnie Cutler, Linda Klein, Eric Jester, and John Dowd.
Hello, my name is Ken Shuttleworth, and I've been taking Kratom for about 5 years now. It has the strength of about a cup of coffee. It relieves, but has the benefit of relieving my stress and anxiety. I was prescribed SSRIs basically all my life for my anxiety, and since I found Kratom about 5 years ago, I haven't had to take them at all. I've also had heart palpitations before finding Kratom, and since finding that, I've been to a cardiologist, and I've had numerous blood tests. Everything has came back unremarkable. So the doctors encouraged me to keep taking it as long as it was helping, and it definitely still does help. I ask you not to pass the ban on Kratom and leave me responsible for what I put in my body as a legal adult. So, thank you.
My name is John Dowd. I live just a couple blocks away from Windy Sea Beach in La Jolla in a house that I own. And I'm here to ask you to not ban this substance, and I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. When the city of San Diego did ban Kratom, it was mixed in with a bunch of other drugs, commonly known as bath salts. The biggest, most notorious incident of a crime with bath salts was a Florida man killing his friend and trying to eat his face. And that's what Kratom was put in there with. I assure you I have no interest in violence or cannibalism. The feds also tried to ban Kratom, and millions of people responded and got them to pull that drug from Schedule 1. It is still the only time that a drug that was scheduled to be Schedule 1 was postponed. Hopefully we can stop that from happening. I'm going to tell you that I don't think Kratom is a nuisance. There is no crime associated with Kratom. There are not Kratom dens, Kratom houses. There are no Kratom encampments of homeless people whose lives have been devastated by Kratom. If you make it illegal, you're going to make it more expensive, and you're going to take the people that do use it and make them criminals. And I assure you, I've never been even questioned by police in my entire life about anything other than a traffic incident. Kratom removal will kill people. I'm going to say something I've never said in public up until today. Between 2011 and 2018, I was prescribed more than 20,000 Vicodins because of chronic pain that I had. And since I started taking Kratom, I have not had any opioid prescriptions. I know there are some experts here that are in favor of this ban here. I'm not an expert. I don't represent anyone other than someone who has purchased and used this plant. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I gave you a letter that I had sent to you via email, just so you do get it. And in conclusion, I want to say that if you ban this, you will be threatening my life, because I will look for alternatives. You will be depriving me of my liberty to pursue something that I believe is beneficial, and you will be making me an unhappy person because I will have to consider dangerous alternatives.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nicolas Bebo. I'm a lifetime Del Mar resident. As a child, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, ADD, ADHD, and severe anxiety disorder. I was on numerous medications throughout my life, different types, over 20, with serious side effects, jaundice being a particularly memorable one. Since I started taking Kratom, I found Kratom, it has changed my life. I no longer have to take any prescription medications. I have no side effects. I have no withdrawal symptoms. I wake up feeling excellent. I don't have to take it every day. I even have given it to my 90-year-old grandmother's Mahjong group for arthritis, and they have all experienced excellent effects from it. Excellent for arthritis, 90 years old, they love it, not addicted to it. Please don't make me a criminal. Please don't make them criminals. I urge you to vote against the proposed ban and work with the American Kratom Association to propose rules and regulations rather than ban something before the research is there. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Klein. And just a little background about myself. I started a tech company when I was 20. By the time I was 25, I started my first investment company. And along with those businesses, I currently own a chain of retail stores. It's a little scary saying this in California, but I've been a right-wing conservative my entire life. And so, you know, being a conservative, especially in the South, things like Kratom has always been a taboo and things that I've always voted against. So without understanding what it was, I was thoroughly against Kratom for a very long time. When I finally tried Kratom for anxiety, which running all these businesses I have a lot of, it really did change my life. I don't do any drugs. I don't smoke marijuana, cigarettes, and I haven't become addicted to Kratom. The amount of positive stories and experiences that I've heard about Kratom and people taking Kratom has been overwhelmingly positive. Kratom's helped me done my job without anxiety. I have a hard time understanding why anybody would want to criminalize Kratom, especially to call Kratom a public nuisance is going a little far when it comes to helping people lead clean and healthy lives, especially when it's helped me in so many ways with my anxiety. I'm having anxiety right now. to criminalize kratom, lawmakers should educate themselves on the subject matter and reach out to stakeholders in the community to get their input. If any of these elements are here today, does the board really understand this issue? And are any of the key stakeholders invited today? And so I ask that we don't criminalize kratom and ban it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Cutler, and I'm trying not to become a nuisance to the County of San Diego. I'm a 54-year-old woman. I have a master's degree in higher education. I'm a career services specialist. I've been helping residents of San Diego County get jobs since, 2007. I've probably helped about 3,000 people find employment. And I wouldn't be able to do that without Kratom. Back in 2013, well, actually, back in the early 2000s, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And eventually, as I got older, it became very painful, and I had a lot of fatigue, neuropathy, and other conditions associated with rheumatoid arthritis. And I'd barely get through my work week. I would come home from work, just crash, watch TV. I didn't do anything on the weekends. I just laid there and waited for Monday. When I discovered Kratom, I was able to live again. I was able to exercise, not that much, but I do exercise a little bit. Go out on the weekends, go shopping, rather than just doing it online. I'm over the moon. In my corporation, I am the #1 career services person because I have the energy and I'm not in pain. I'm not distracted by being in pain, and I'm not tired. I just want to tell you that us Kratom users aren't a bunch of druggies or nuisances. We're average working people who want to do well and live our lives with a substance that doesn't harm us. I'm sure you've watched a pharmacy commercial where they tell you about the drug for rheumatoid arthritis, neuropathy, what have you, nerve pain. And before it's over, there's a list of all the side effects. I don't want those side effects. I prefer not to use those other alternatives if possible. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Before the next speaker begins, I'll call 5 additional speakers: Matthew McColland, Ashley Brandenborough, Edward Etu, Stacy Ralph, and Alexander Karp.
My name's Eric Jester. I'm a father of 4, and I do a lot of construction. I've done it my whole life. And 10 years ago, I was in a car accident and ruptured 2 discs in my neck. And I had to tell my younger daughters at the time, I couldn't hold them anymore. I couldn't pick them up. We couldn't dance. And the last person talked about side effects. I can't take the opioid-based drugs. They make me sick. So I live in pain, a lot of it, and take a lot of ibuprofen because that's about all I can take to help with it. And recently found Kratom and am able to be more productive at work and work longer days and be able to take care of my family because that's what's a priority to me. And taking care of my family is my job as a father. And I can enjoy my life and not be so grouchy and not be so short-tempered because I'm not in excruciating pain when I have the ability to take Kratom. Please don't ban it.
Good morning. My name is Matthew McCullen, and it is an honor to be here. I would like to talk about Kratom. My story with Kratom started in 2016. I was going to school. I got my bachelor's in psychology from Cal State San Marcos and my master's in media psychology from Fielding Graduate University with an emphasis in media psychology. And I've been following the Kratom story, and I want to tell you that this botanical is a natural botanical. There's a reason why God and Mother Nature placed this botanical here to help thousands of people. I opened my own Kratom store after watching my best friend almost die multiple times. He had a car accident in 2014, and he damaged his spine. He had a spinal fusion. He can't even feel it. We drove 3 hours because we don't want this to affect other counties and especially the state. So we drove here today 3 hours, even though he's in so much pain. You know, he used to be in all kinds of drugs, prescribed medications. He was on fentanyl, on Dilaudid. His mother and I have been there for him. He's alive here because of Kratom. I am here representing thousands of people from all over California and all over the United States, also countries like Mexico and Europe. And I want to tell you to please research it. It's all about media literacy. I really encourage you to read this book called Kratom, A Product of Use, Not a Product of Abuse. I believe in preserving plant legality through education, and I propose that here in San Diego and in the entire state. It's about creating a media literacy campaign so that people can learn, and it's about making the right choices. But Kratom has saved my friend's life, has helped my dad. He used to be an alcoholic, and because of Kratom, he is better now. It has helped my grandma, who was addicted to morphine because of pain in her neck, and I can go on and on. I wrote a letter and sent it, as well as this whole weekend since Friday, all I've been doing is contacting people so they can express how they feel towards this botanical. But I believe in this botanical. God placed this botanical here for a reason, and it is a miracle. It is a God-sent botanical. Thank you. And in Mother Nature we trust. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacy Ralph. I've been living in San Diego for about 20 years now. I moved here from New York. I'm a graphic designer. I have my own company. In New York, I worked at Sony and MTV as an artist and designer. And I lived in Brooklyn and commuted on the subway. And in the 80s, I basically lost that decade. I was injured. I lost all my teeth in a car accident, sitting in the back of a taxi cab at a red light. I've had 4 surgeries. I have bad back, bad neck. I live in chronic pain, and the idea of aging in New York was something I was very frightened to do, especially with the subways and that type of commute. So I was fortunate enough to be able to move to San Diego. It's 20 years later. I'm now 65, and I fear for my future, because I have to continue to work because of the economy, because of 9/11, because of the economic collapse in 2008. I've been financially devastated 3 times. I've brought my way back. I've rebuilt myself, but I'm getting old. And the older I get, the worse I hurt. And I do what I can. I discovered Kratom about 6 years ago. I started taking it. I wanted to try to find a trusted vendor, and one of the problems that we have is that we have to really get online and communicate with each other, the people in that community, to find out who we're buying from. And I completely support the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, because I don't think any of us are against regulation. We don't want kids to have it, just as we don't want kids to drink. We want to know what we're getting in the bottle. I also take a supplement called berberine, which is good for blood sugar control. My doctor knows a lot about that one. I want to know the berberine that I'm taking is berberine. And basically what I'm asking you to do is work with the Kratom Association and institute some really good, helpful regulation rather than ban it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexander Karp, and I currently reside in Escondido. I moved to California, to San Diego, some 13 years ago for my first job out of college, and I worked for Hewlett-Packard up in Rancho Bernardo for 10 years before venturing into entrepreneurship. I also have a degenerating disc between my L5 and S1 vertebrae. I had to start actively managing this chronic pain from that condition when I was in high school. I did physical therapy, chiropractic care, stretching, nutrition. I did it all. And even with all of that preventative maintenance, I still had episode flare-ups that would incapacitate me for days. Walking, standing, sitting, laying down, sleeping, all became problematic. And as I got older, these episodes came more frequently and lasted longer. to the point where it culminated to a tipping point in 2016, which some of my friends refer to as the dark days. And I was going through an episode for 5 months. I stopped exercising, stopped playing sports, stopped going out with friends. I started spiraling down this depressive and angry state. I could no longer envision having a family in the future. I could no longer see myself in a future that I wanted to be a part of. And that was until I found Kratom. Kratom takes my pain from a 10 down to a 2 or a 3 and lets me get back to my life, lets me exercise, lets me do yoga, lets me be healthy. 2 to 3 years ago, I was taking Kratom 2 to 3 times a day because my pain was so bad. Now I take it 2 to 3 times per week. I ask that this distinguished council please look past the misinformation and look past the clickbait headlines. I would like you to not support the ban for Kratom and even so much as reverse the ban in San Diego City and instead work with the American Kratom Association and enact a Kratom Consumer Protection Act that adds sensible regulation to a life-giving plant called Kratom. Thank you.
Before the next speaker begins, I'll call forward 5 additional speakers: Victor Chung, Lindsay Richardson, Andrew Fairberer, Jacob Spear, and Ethan Friday.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Edward E2. I'm a United States Marine, honorably discharged. I'm a disabled combat veteran. I'm also a chronic pain patient. I've received almost all of my health care, if you can call it that, at various VAs across the country. What started as a muscle strain on active duty in 2006 led to a lumbar spinal fusion in 2013, which was all but botched. Even today, I'm waiting in varying amounts of pain for a radiofrequency ablation to burn nerve roots in my lower spine to provide some level of pain relief. If that doesn't do anything, I'm left. My only other options are narcotic painkillers or Kratom. Before and after my spinal fusion in 2013, all the VA really did was shotgun narcotic pain medications at me, 75 milligrams of morphine sulfate and 60 milligrams of hydrocodone each day. And back then I weighed 105 pounds. When VA policy changed for the sake of PR, and since I don't consume cannabis in any form because it does nothing for pain relief for me, I was left with 2 options for some pain relief: potentially deadly opiates of some type from off the streets, or Kratom, and I picked Kratom. In almost all cases of deaths associated with Kratom, as tragic as they were, some other substance was almost always involved. But Kratom was immediately blamed because of misguided fear. If you're going to ban this, you might as well ban coffee too, because both the similarities and dangers of both are they're more similar than not. The simple fact of the matter is that if you ban Kratom in San Diego County, people here will either turn to or turn back to narcotic painkillers and heroin, likely laced with fentanyl. People will die as a result of the ban, and you'll be partially responsible for that, due to being misinformed about what this is and what it actually does for people. This saves lives, and it saved mine. Thank you.
Everyone, my name is Victor Chung. I'd actually like to start off by asking you guys a question. If you think about your loved ones, your parents, your kids, your friends, do any of them live with pain? Do any of them live with chronic pain? Maybe one of you guys are living with pain yourselves. When you're suffering from chronic pain, it consumes every part of your life. It's always there no matter what you do. That throbbing pain, that stinging, constant pain. You'll reach down, you'll try to just live your life, move around a bit, that sharp pain hits you. And no matter what, it takes over who you are. You become less of a person, less of who you are to the community. If you're like me, you've tried everything to manage the pain. We've seen doctors who prescribe you drugs, as everyone has talked about. For me, it makes me feel like a zombie. I can't operate and function as I like to be. I've had needles stab me with cortisol, and I've had an epidural shot into my spine. And, I've tried everything. chiropractors, acupuncturists, lots of physical therapy, and none of it unfortunately worked. And my doctor actually told me the only thing that can relieve me of my pain is for me to get a spinal replacement. So my L4, L5, they would remove it, and I had a 60% chance of pain reduction. Unfortunately, they go through your abdomen, and my wife and I were trying to have our second kid, and the thought of perhaps being infertile because your reproductive nerves are there just wasn't on the table. And so one of the folks over there just mentioned the dark days. I went through a dark period as well, too. I didn't use opioids or anything. I just became depressed and was less of a person. And like everyone here, I discovered Kratom. It was the only thing that I used to help reduce my pain and help me be myself again. I have been using it for 3 years, every day, twice a day. The amount that I've used has decreased over time. So instead of the amount before, I've cut my usage in half. And now I'm healing myself through.
Can I ask you to go ahead and conclude?
Sure, I will. Sorry. Anyway, I think an outright ban is extreme of an action, and I hope you guys support the AKA, American Kratom Association, and the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Andrew Farabee. I'm born here in San Diego, San Diego State alumni, and I am a business owner. I lived in many different aspects of San Diego County. I love this community. With that, many of us here drank coffee this morning. Kratom is inside of the coffee plant family. I think that it's really just a great alternative to coffee. That is, for me, that's what it's been. It's been a smoother effect without the crash. It helps me perform better while I build my business and manage the stresses of scaling an organization. But the main thing here for me is living with anxiety and depression. And building a business and having the responsibility of managing team members, managing clients, and managing vendors, and doing all the things that requires of entrepreneurship is one of the most demanding things I think the human body can take, and the mind. And for when I see a doctor, they're going to prescribe me Xanax or antidepressants. That's immediately what they're going to give me. Those do not work. Those are not effective drugs for trying to be a successful person who's going to thrive as an entrepreneur, who's going to manage team members, who's going to put himself out there in the world of all the risk and danger associated with building a business. And Xanax puts you down. Why would a doctor prescribe me Xanax for my anxiety when it puts me down? Antidepressants make me even more depressed. And on the label of the antidepressants, most or all of them say that it can provide, suicidal thoughts are a part of that. So why would I not have the ability to take a plant that is natural, that can help me be a thriving member of society? All I'm trying to do is succeed, take care of my team, take care of my customers, but I have mental challenges. I have mental health issues that I've been battling. And when I go to the doctors, they're not providing me what I want. I have found Kratom to be the smoothest and cleanest way possible for me to thrive as an entrepreneur. And the only thing I'm asking is that the only Kratom that is bad is the Kratom that third-party people use to tamper Kratom. And when they're doing it for their own financial gain, the best thing we can do is actually provide a clean, is to ensure that it's clean and that it's regulated and that the government is doing their job to give its citizens what it needs to thrive and succeed.
Okay, your time is up, but thank you. Appreciate it.
As the next speakers come forward, I'll call the remaining speakers in opposition: Katherine Kelly, Brian Kuykendall, and Mike Bioladau. Thank you. Apologize for mispronouncing that name.
Hi, Board. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Ethan Friday, and I'm 39 years old. I have a pretty typical cliche story. I'm from San Diego County, Alpine in particular. Grew up there most of my life. I am an addict. I'm 108 days in recovery. I deal with a pretty severe case, IV heroin drug use. I've done Suboxone and methadone and treatments, and you name it, I've been there through the system. Approximately 110 days ago, when I went through a 3-day detox, and my friend brought me Kratom and to help me alleviate the symptoms, and it helped me when nothing else would. You know what I mean? It was a remedy, a home remedy. to help with one of the most agonizing, painful, tormenting hells that you can't imagine if you haven't been there. And I don't think I come here unique or alone. I think I stand for a lot of people that are either too ashamed or normally wouldn't speak out about what's really going on inside them or the demons they're battling with. It's an epidemic, it really is. So thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Jacob Spear, and I am an entrepreneur with an advertising agency, and I am one of the few people that can say I was actually arrested for Kratom here in the city of San Diego, and I can assure you I am far from a criminal. Again, as stated before, the most I've ever even been almost convicted of is a traffic ticket. So it's kind of crazy that I, of all people, was actually banned with possession of Kratom. That being said, with people on the streets that are addicted to real pharmaceutical drugs, heroin, opioids, Kratom has been a blessing in disguise for many of these individuals. For the common person with chronic pain, it acts as relief without the negative consequences of those hard drugs. With such few non-pharmaceutical remedies that are actually out there, this is actually one natural remedy that has the following awesome proponents to it. Pain, anxiety, it can help with attention. There's many uses for this plant. For the senior that has trouble golfing, it's a great way to help overcome the pain. For the father or mother who wants to just play with their kids. For the entrepreneur like myself, like my friend Andrew, who just needs a little bit of boost of focus. Or the heavy drug user like the person who just spoke, who is trying to get off of hard drugs and doesn't have a solution for another remedy. This is a very practical, natural solution for that human. When looking at the one main reason that you guys are actually coming to the front of the actual argument, it's argued that Kratom should be classified as an opioid and that it has already caused 10 deaths. Out of those 10 deaths, there has been one death in the past 6 years with 15 million active users every single year that has been only Kratom inside of their body. That is without heroin, that is without 2 gunshot wounds that one of them was caused from. One death, one, okay? So let's look at practically coffee, alcohol, ibuprofen. Ibuprofen has 16,000 deaths a year, okay? Alcohol, I don't even think we have to say. I don't think it's even a comparison.
Let me ask you to go ahead and wrap up.
Of course. Bottom line, this is not a drug that should be banned. The County of San Diego should not have the right to decide whether or not I, as an American citizen, should be able to use this to better my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of several clients. My name is Brian Kirby White. I'm a local San Diego attorney, and I was asked to appear by 3 clients that wanted me to share their stories. But I'd also like to share from my own perspective as a teacher. I teach at a university locally, and I teach the relationship between science, ethics, and law, and economics as well. And what I'd like to say, to start off, and I'll briefly share the client stories, is San Diego, California is a leader of moral change. We're a leader of scientific understanding. The world's going to follow us. Utah has already passed the Kratom Protection Act, and we're debating, and I mean this with great respect, we're debating whether to ban a substance that possibly killed 10 people, one of which may have been killed by this substance, 9 of which maybe wasn't. But aspirin kills 3,000 people a year. 480,000 people die in car accidents. 66,000 people die of alcohol. So what I'm saying is that I think that it'd be very wise for us to use an intelligent regulatory system, because if we ban a substance that has a very low rate of death, what are we saying to the world? Like, why would we do that when there's great benefit and low harm? And under public nuisance law, as I understand it, the harm has to outweigh the benefit. And here, I think it's clear that the benefit outweighs the harm. So if we forward this, I think it is a mistake. And furthermore, I think that we should go further than this, not just not ban it. I think we should actively take a role in intelligently regulating it to protect people from what could happen, as others have said. And in a nutshell, and I know I'm going to run out of time, but in a nutshell, these 3 people have asked me to share their stories, one of which was she was a concert violinist. She had a spinal injury and started taking opioids. I guess I'm about to run out of time. She started taking opioids. She discovered Kratom, and it has solved her pain problem. Her daughter, very quickly, actually started taking opioids too, and without a prescription. And she discovered Kratom, and it's helped her. If we ban it, what's going to happen to her? The third person was an alcoholic who recovered. For these reasons, I request that you do not ban it and that we really look at intelligent regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Oh, can I submit this to the board?
Sure. Just give it to the clerk behind you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Billadu. I'm a 52-year-old business owner on Adams Avenue. Nathan, I'm talking to you. I am a disabled vet business owner. I had a horrible accident serving in the Coast Guard back when I was 19. I'm 52 now. So unfortunately, I'm living with pain management for most of my life. And like folks have mentioned in the past, the VA's response is opioids, or I've got Tylenol or marijuana. But actually, Kratom is almost zero side effect. I've been able to manage my pain and run my business successfully over the years. So I think the science may not be fully there, but you can hear the stories. Kratom is a fantastic option compared to what's out there. And if you do make it a public nuisance, then we're forced to either go on the dark web or wherever else we have to go. What's really nice is we can go to a store, you've got quality control at that store, you know what you're getting versus what other options do we have? If I go back to the VA, they're going to offer up opioids, which I choose not to. So then I can also take 800, 1,600 milligrams of Tylenol on a daily basis. So I would say that the Kratom usage is not broke, so let's not fix it, and let's be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Thank you very much. My name is Katherine Kelly. I don't want to be redundant. I just want to share that when I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, as part of my treatment, I used Kratom to end a 25-year dependency on prescription medications given to my doctor for fibromyalgia and chronic pain due to a car accident. Next month will be my 6-year anniversary of that diagnosis. I have gone from using the Kratom several times a day to now only using it several times a week. It has changed my life in amazing ways. I have shared it with my mother, who is in her 80s, who's getting to the point of really not being able to have quality of life anymore. And now, with very little usage, she has been able to really reinvent and get up and move and has a job that she goes to. And it has completely changed her quality of life as well. I'm also here to urge you to work with the American Kratom Association, because I too believe that we should have some regulations. We don't want to have Kratom that's mixed with fentanyl, that's mixed with other dangerous components. So thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Thank you.
We'll do a final call for Holly McCusick, Ashley Brandenborough, Lindsay Richardson. Seeing no movement in the chamber, that concludes public testimony in this item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and we will acknowledge that we have 29 individuals who didn't want to speak but wanted to register their opposition to this item. Let me just start off by saying how much I appreciate everybody's cooperation and not clapping, and I think the hand waving certainly demonstrated your position on this item, and I just want to compliment everybody on how well spoken they were and focusing on the issue that is before us. Let me ask Supervisor Jacob if she would like to make any additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank all the individuals that came down to speak today. And that was a brilliant suggestion by the chair to do the hand waving. It worked very well. So thank you for that. I have to say, very compelling arguments not to do this. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Wooten in particular and also Mr. Kempman from the medical examiner's office and ask you, I mean, based on the testimony we've heard, why should the board declare Kratom as a public nuisance? And in the alternative, why not do what some have requested, regulate it or adopt some regulations rather than declaring it a public nuisance? So if you don't mind, Dr. Wooten, you want to go? Who wants to go first? And thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Cox, members of the board. Yes, indeed, the speakers today have presented some very compelling information, but as we have seen with other issues that have come before the board, when there's not evidence or support or information from, for instance, the FDA regulating this particular substance, in public health, we deal with data, the evidence, and facts. And based on the facts, CDC is recognizing that Kratom is becoming an increasing, its use is increasing in the United States, and it's becoming an emerging public health threat. And while there have been a lot of individuals here today to oppose the action that the board is proposing, the individuals who have died can't be here today. And so there is a lot of information that we can take and look at. The Office of Medical Examiners representation is here today. They have written an article about Kratom. So because of the information that's out there, it's being used increasingly in the United States. And given that there is no proven medical use for the product, there's no FDA-approved use, and the data suggests that certain substances in Kratom have opioid properties that expose users to the risk of addiction, abuse, and dependence. An option to ban Kratom is an option that we should consider, and I would still support that recommendation, but looking at that and then coming back in the 30 days as you requested with a recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Jacob, especially. The speakers here have represented the medical examiner's data fairly reasonably. I actually do recall providing the information to Ms. Babin. We uncommonly see mitragynine in people who have died. When we see it, it is in people that have died, usually of multiple drug toxicity. We pretty much don't see it in people that have died from unrelated things. So we have one suicide where the cause of death was unrelated to drugs, and one pedestrian that died unrelated to drugs. And again, uncommonly alone as a cause of death. And so why not support regulation? And I think supporting regulation is a very good thing. The speakers have summarized the literature, what's known about it, pretty well. The problem is we don't know a lot scientifically about it. What we know about the dangers is as anecdotal as what we know about the benefits. So there aren't a lot of controlled medical studies is the problem for me. So I think regulation is important. I don't know how to characterize support for declaring it a nuisance or not. The danger is that it's available, and it's available in ways that are unsafe sometimes, which the speakers have presented that. What they're asking for is that it be available in a safe way. And I don't know how to make that happen.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the speaker?
With the chair, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you had any.
No, go ahead.
I just had a question for you. So what type of regulations might you suggest other than the outright ban?
That it be controlled for safety, that it be sold in a way that it can be proven to not have adulterants or sold in very concentrated forms that might be toxic. Most importantly, that it be studied so that the right determination can be made. That they be studied more.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. The sheriff?
Hello, everyone. The sheriff's concern with this drug is its availability and the youth in our communities, and the fact that it is a plant-based drug that is purported to be herbal and healthy. So our concern is public safety, and specifically the youth in our communities using this drug and its addictive qualities. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Would the Chief of Narcotics from the District Attorney's Office like to make a comment? There you are.
There I am.
Thank you. Sean?
Yes, thank you. I didn't expect to speak today before you, but thank you for having me here. I think on behalf of the District Attorney, we echo some of the sentiments that have already been raised. If we draw a parallel, not to say toxicologically, but if we draw a parallel to what's happened with Prop 64 and marijuana, even with that substance, which was legalized and passed by the voters, there was a three-step process of making sure that the marijuana that's consumed doesn't contain carcinogens like carbofurans, molds, pesticides. And so we have that framework in place for that substance. And I think the board has already talked about the wisdom of perhaps stepping back and saying, what is this that people are consuming and that kids are getting a hold of? And is this something we should be concerned about, as Dr. Kempman and Dr. Wooten have raised? Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you being here. And I think, based on the testimony and based on what I'm hearing, I'd like to do a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to give the staff 60 days to come back, but with two things. A direction to the staff. Again, what we're doing, let me back up a minute. This would only apply to the unincorporated area, whatever we're doing, but maybe we can do something here that would be very beneficial to other jurisdictions too, including the city of San Diego. So I'd like to do two things. I would like to direct staff to return to the board, not in 30 days, but 60 days, with the proposed ordinance amendment declaring the mitragynine and hydroxymitragynine to be a public nuisance and subject to civil abatement in the unincorporated area, and also to direct staff to, and this would include our health officials, the medical examiner, the district attorney, and also the sheriff's department representatives, as well as our CAO, to a direction to work with the industry, the Kratom Association folks, on coming back with some regulations. Let's take a look at it, and then we'd have two choices before the board. So my motion would be twofold, and to see if there's a way we can come up with regulating Kratom so that it's not a public nuisance, but it would still be available if that's feasible from a public health standpoint, to make it available based on some of the testimony to relieve pain, anxiety, and the other aspects of this drug that may be beneficial, even though we've got some facts here that the FDA still has big concerns. But I'd like to try both on this if the board would support that.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Supervisor Fletcher.
I'll second that, and I support the coming back with options. I think if you look at some of the recent items we tackled where we came into issues that we had great concern about the public health, there were certain product lines there that we said we don't think those have any redeeming public health value, and we banned those. There were some that we had concerns about, and we placed a moratorium pending something else. There were others that we thought, maybe this is worthy of an exemption to allow this to continue with certain conditions, and then there were some things that we didn't touch. And so I think if we can come into this and have staff come back with some of those, Are there some uses? Are there some conditions? Are there some environments where perhaps this is okay, like we've heard from some of the speakers? Are there some that we think are harmful? Are there some we think that are targeting the wrong populations? And allow them to bring back those options so then we can assess and make a decision. I know Utah, Georgia, and Arizona did consumer protection acts surrounding Kratom that provided a regulatory framework to ensure public health, but to ensure the folks for where it was appropriate could still access it. I know a handful of other states didn't. They just did an across-the-board ban. And so I think coming back to us with options on both of them with some supporting evidence, maybe a look at some of the jurisdictions that have done this and what was their underlying rationale, then I think we can see if there's a nuanced approach or a flexible approach, or if perhaps that's not the right approach and we should do a ban, but then we'll at least be informed. So I would support that effort. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Gaspar.
Well, thank you very much. Well, first, let me provide a little background, personal background. As Supervisor Jacob mentioned in her opening remarks, I do work closely in prevention circles here in San Diego. I work closely with the Attorney General on the opioid crisis, and I speak frequently about the 73,000 Americans who lost their lives to overdose in this country last year. I work with the recovery community. I work closely with clinicians who are providing care to chronic pain patients in my own outpatient physical therapy business here in North County. I work daily with those who are struggling with substance abuse disorders. And I relate far too well to the gentleman, the speaker, who stated that he had lost way too many loved ones to drugs and alcohol. And finally, as an elected official, I can tell you after spending 3 terms in office, I have heard about every type of nuisance that you can possibly imagine, from leaf blowers to dogs barking, trees, straws, plastic bags. Those all come readily to mind. Yet this is something that I've never heard about in any of my circles. I have to be honest about that fact. So much so that up until a week ago, you could have asked me about Kratom, and I likely would have thought it was a popular rapper or maybe a new YouTube sensation. And even after listening to all of you today, it's still unclear how it's pronounced. Is it Kratom, Kratom? I don't know, lots of different versions. And certainly, I don't want to offend anyone, but I didn't know that the American Kratom Association even existed. So suffice it to say that I was fascinated by the testimony here today because this topic is all new to me. But yet I'm sitting in the chair making a very important decision that impacts your lives. And I want to let you know that I'm thankful that you came and that you shared your stories, because I had no idea that this existed, and perhaps that I should have. You know, one speaker advocated for the feds to do more research, but I'm sitting here telling you that I'm advocating for myself to do more research on this topic. Here's what I do know. Any commercial product spiked with illicit drugs, meth, heroin, fentanyl, terrifies me. And I take my job to protect public safety very seriously. But also of interest, if the FDA and the DEA aren't regulating, then why is the county even going down this road where we have very little expertise in this area? That's concerning me. You can make anything a dangerous substance. Look at the latest popular trend. It's almost Valentine's Day. Sweet Tarts, Smarties, very popular children's candy. Did you know that our kids are crushing those up? And they're smoking Smarties. They're ingesting particles into their lungs, which is creating big problems. Things showing up in our emergency rooms you'd never imagine. That's scary too. But in situations where I think we're lacking any information about the health impacts and also the nuisance in San Diego County, I'd really like to bring this down to a local level. What are the impacts? What are we experiencing here on the local level? And that's something that I'm missing entirely today, and I think it's critical to the conversation. It's also interesting to note that as a state, as a society, we're in the process of decriminalizing heroin, but we're considering criminalizing Kratom. Just let that sink in for a minute. So, you know, ordinarily I'm all about options, bring them back, but the truth is, to me, that spending staff time and energy on both of these options seems unnecessary, because I do agree that it would be in the best interest of our community to look into how we might regulate. And that would keep people from, the dangers of a substance being laced with other products like fentanyl, heroin, but would allow people who are using this in a different way to perhaps continue. So I would be all for the second part, working with industry on regulations, producing something meaningful for San Diego. But unfortunately, as the current motion stands, I can't support it because I don't think that exploring that nuisance, that ban at this time is the appropriate course of action.
Okay, Vice Chairman Jim Desmond.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this is quite a learning experience here today. Public safety is our #1 concern as government, but prescribing drugs for different pains and ailments is not really, you don't want 5 politicians doing that for you. And so I appreciate the flexibility that Supervisor Jacob has put into the motion there. It seems there's pros and cons and benefits, to Kratom and not that even if it's not FDA approved, there's a lot of products out there that are not FDA approved. Most of your dietary supplements and things like that are not FDA approved. And so to me, that doesn't really garner a lot of weight that it doesn't have that approval yet. However, the FDA has continued to warn consumers not to use Kratom. They haven't approved it or denied it. They just say don't use it. So I appreciate the flexibility of the motion as it is, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. As I sit here sipping my third cup of coffee, I feel a little guilty this morning. But I do appreciate the comments that have been made by all the speakers. And again, I compliment you on the way you presented your arguments. As I sit here, marijuana is classified as a Class 1 drug, and yet Kratom, as I understand it, is not classified as a Class 1 drug, and yet marijuana is legal in California for not only medical purposes but for recreational uses. Since the FDA is really the national agency that's responsible for telling us what things are acceptable to use for medical purposes and which ones are not, I am a little chagrined to move forward with a prohibition. I do think that the motion that's on the floor has some flexibility, and I think that reasonable people can sit here and debate whether there should be maybe some constraints on the utilization of Kratom. And like Supervisor Gasper, I hadn't even heard of the word until last week when we started taking a look at the agenda items for this week. And I was certainly not aware that there was an American Kratom Association, but I guess there's an American Association for just about everything nowadays. But I think, regulation may be appropriate. And again, whatever we do here would only be applicable in the unincorporated area, but certainly, we certainly have ordinances that preclude the use of tobacco or sale of tobacco to end use of tobacco by minors under 21. Same thing with alcohol, same thing with marijuana. And so maybe there are some regulations that would be appropriate in regards to the sale and use of Kratom. So I'm going to support the motion, but I think when it comes back, I really would like some more information from our own county staff in regards to those 10 deaths from 2014 to 2018. It appears that maybe only one of those was related to straight usage of Kratom. Obviously, if you alter drugs, they can have a different impact than if they were just taken by themselves. And we've seen all sorts of things altered over the years that have been very detrimental to people's health and well-being. So again, I will support the motion, but when we come back, I'd like to have a lot more information in regards to the impact we've seen in San Diego County.
Chairman Cox, I'd just also mention that the other thing we're going to have to look at is whether we would legally be able to regulate. That, just so you all know, that's going to be a second question. We've only looked at the question of being able to do the civil action, so that's a second.
Is that in regards to the age limit?
No, as far as regulating, you're talking about doing some regulations of the product. That would be a whole other question, whether we can actually draft regulations, whether we have authority to do that.
But we conceivably could put limits in regards to the sale to minors, and that's something you're going to be taking a look at?
That's all, we can look at all that. Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
very good. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes with Supervisor Gaspar voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Okay, we have